maybe this isn't the right question, but so what would be the utopia of awakened people? What would that look like?
I don't know. You got me.
But it wouldn't. But they'd be here. We'd be here as awakened people, no? Or
I
do
think
we?
so. I mean, it's hard for me to say because this thing that seems to be like a gill at the slit of the spine that can open up and then, suddenly you're possessed. I don't know. Suddenly you are the universe, whatever this is that breathing it like you're still, well, and you've experienced with the drug trip, you're still you. You might be a little tiny voice, and then there's all this cartoonist shit happening in the foreground. I don't know if you've had that experience, but
Yeah.
but you're still there. So is there that you're there, but you are all over the place? That you know yourself as that? Because that I am experience of being the universe, and does that have to just be an experience, or can that be the way you see? But also, you are part of that universe, and so you're also you seeing through your eyes as you're
Mm.
seeing all of this stuff. I mean, do you become this sort of prismatic creature? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know, he says. I don't know. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, just yeah.
I mean, how do you step out of time while remaining in time? I guess that's the question. The
Well,
body is
that
still
was
alive. The mind is timeless. What happens?
I. Let me frame a question to address at a future time, if there are future times. One of the things I jotted down to talk to you about at some point after reading Jeff Kripal's newest book, How to Think Implausibly, he does a lot with time. All of which always confuses me. I'm always confused by time. And I thought, well, what does Jeremy think about the reality of time? I mean, in one sense, that's entirely beside the point because, yeah, it just seems like an unimportant question suddenly.
I mean, it's funny because the question of time is important if you want to try to like fix the plot holes of the sci-fi story of like how do synchronicities happen, how does deja vu happen,
Yeah,
how are these things walking through my wall, and
yeah,
that sort of thing. But you're right. Ultimately, outside of that, it's not really important. Um,
yeah,
and ultimately, I would say that the nothingness, non-duality, which contains all time. I mean, the thinker, if you want to call it that, who is that? The first person identity is truth with a capital T, as we're calling it. But what that sounds like is wisdom, is, timeless wisdom. It's not timeless science. It's not timeless time travel. It's not remote viewing, you
Here's a
know.
question here's a genuine question. But except that I'm just trying to I'm trying to come a little bit closer to you how you experienced your whatever the big one. Does the category of personhood enter into that, or is it totally non-dual, totally empty and full at the same time?
I think the personal is part of the fullness.
Okay,
So therefore, there you are. I
okay,
think the illusion of having left my body, had an experience, going back into my body, I think that is like a necessary illusion of movement because the
yeah,
body is in time. And so there's got to be this sense of self that's coming and going and having an experience. But the experience itself calls attention to the fact that that experience is always already happening. And part of what's always already happening now, in the now, is you. So it's a
mhm,
weird thing. It's like,
mm,
yeah, I mean,
mm,
it's just a,
mm.
I guess, I don't know, is that hard to wrap your head around? Maybe.
Well, yeah. Yeah, yeah, it is. But I think that's part of your point that you can't wrap your head around it.
Well, this is the thing. That's another thing that I think gets misread is like I think things can be articulated. I may be articulating it poorly, but I'm sure if I sat down I could probably write it out and maybe it would make sense. But that articulation doesn't isn't the thing,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
articulation So you can, so these people in the past who have said like, it's this nameless, wordless, you can't ever say what it is. My interpretation of that, at least, is not that it could not be physically stated, but that the statement of it isn't the first person identity as it, and that's where we need to be. And the second you start talking about it is the moment that you're sort of back in time talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. And maybe that's, I mean, just to refer to Jeff's book again, the most recent one, I found I found that much of it was, really fascinating and interesting and all, but I found myself in the end, after having completed it and talked about it in the class, just being really super uncomfortable with tying it all up into dual aspect monism, and that felt so impersonal. And you've been watching the class. You have I forget where I've said what, but one of the themes that's most important to me is the notion of intimacy. And what's lacking. Oh, and here's a way to think of the difference between a person and an archetype, which we were talking about a while ago. It's hard to think of an archetype being intimate with you, whereas that's maybe the definition of personhood. It's any being with whom you can have an intimate relationship. And I think one way of framing my life is the search for intimacy, duh. And you're not going to get that in scholarship or academia by definition. And you're not going to get it in the sciences by definition. Or when it does appear, I mean, I became an entomologist because I had a moment of intimacy with a bug, but if you try to bring that to graduate school, it doesn't, no, they're not interested. And so I think that's one way of framing this whole thing. And in one of the, maybe I actually said this out loud, in one of the last classes, and this puts a kind of a point on it insofar as I understand what you're saying, is that one of the sort of utopian, dreamy backdrops to my entire existence as a human being could be a desire to meld the cosmic and the intimate. And that kind of sounds like your experience. Does that ring at all for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cosmic and the intimate. I mean, what could be more intimate than being the cosmos?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
it's an actually. Let's dissect that for a second, because the I am experience, there is the sense of being spirit riding through all of these, what I call the toy box of mind, which again has sort of the visual of and the deep feeling of a smile in the wind, just exuberant with joy, but it's impersonal. There's no looking at me in the corner of this experience going, am I dying? What's going on? There's no casting a light on me and going, Jeremy, this is you. It is you. You know it as you, but it is impersonal joy. And that's the thing with all of the truth stuff is impersonal love, which sounds cold and distant, but really means love for all for one, which is you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where words fail, because when you say like all is one and you're really loving yourself, self thinks, oh yeah, selfish love, I know what that is,
Yeah.
And if you say impersonal love, you go, who wants that? That sounds like a psycho, So we have bad words. Let's just admit that we have bad words.
We do. We have very bad words.
So let's just call it big love, big joy. I don't know what you would call it.
Yeah.
That these are now also you. You know them as all of us. It's what we all are.
Yeah.
And yet it's impersonal in the sense that spirit is also spirit. So just like you and I are one, but we're not. Is that dual monism? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with spirit. Spirit's got its own thing, which is just roller coastering through the universe of itself. So there's no intimacy. So the intimacy is that you are one. The intimacy isn't that you're cozying up to a god.
No, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I should just
okay.
put it that way. But
Yeah.
so is that what? Explain to people to Jeff Kripal's dual aspect, dualistic monism, or whatever the
Yeah,
hell
he
he's
gets
calling
it.
it.
It's a, I mean, yeah, it's a metaphysical view of the nature of reality, which, and the backdrop for this is Western European Enlightenment rationalism. I mean, honestly, in order to make sense of this, I think the quickest way is to just set it up historically. So, um, after a couple of millennia of religious wars, people in Western Europe said, "Screw that shit. Let's get some certainty here, so that people don't have to fight over stuff. Let's just figure out what's real and what isn't real, and this God stuff gets in the way. And how are we going to do that?" And they tried a simple way of thinking of things. And Descartes is the whipping boy here. He closed his eyes and said, "Well, what can I know with certainty?" He says, "Well, I know I can think." And there births the modern utilitarian view of reality, where the mind is inside the head and what's outside is matter. And Descartes knew this was a bit of a problem. He said, "Well, how do those two things interact? I don't know. It probably happens in the pineal gland, and I don't know. I think God does it." And that was his answer. And flash forward a few hundred years, and you've got mind and matter, and the mind does, you know, and you've got matter, and if there's meaning in the universe, it's because mind projected it on there. And this has not worked out well for moral reasons and social reasons, but it's been very successful technologically. But among other things, among many, many, many other things, with the rise of quantum mechanics, even the physicists are saying, yeah, boy, it looks like mind and matter maybe aren't that separate after all. So what would you do differently? Well, obviously, reality is in some sense one, but it has two faces. That would be the dual aspects. Sometimes it looks like matter, and sometimes it looks like mind. That's dual aspect monism. And if you're a skeptic, you would say, "But that doesn't really answer the question." And you would be right. But it's an attempt to frame things so that you have recourse other than saying, "Well, it's all mind and matter just is solidified consciousness," or "It's all actually matter and mind is just an illusion." Neither one of those things is very stable or explanatory. In one sense, neither is dual aspect monism, but that's what it means.
Hmm. Okay. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Because, I mean, to my mind, from my experience, everything is consciousness,
Yeah,
being.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I tend towards that too, for who knows what. Yeah, because
Not that, again, but these are things that don't really,
they don't really
they don't
matter.
matter.
I tell you
Um,
though, from Kripal's point of view, the reason it matters is, and maybe this is unfair to him, but I think it's basically right. He's been jumping up and down for decades trying to get people who are respectable, academic, critical thinkers, really, really smart people, to look at the crazy shit that they refuse to look at. And one of the reasons they refuse to look at it is because they don't have an epistemology or a metaphysics that can make any sense of it. And that's why the quantum physicists thought, they thought we've gone insane, or the mathematics has gone insane, or the world has gone insane, because this simply can't be true. And then they thought, maybe it actually is. And so you want a framing, you want some sort of framework that you can go to a conference and say, "Look, what if a reality were like this? If I can convince them that this is a possibility, then I can bring in Whitley Strieber," you know, and people
yeah.
won't immediately go insane.
Well, but So, you would ask, what does the world look like if everyone's, quote unquote enlightened? What does a world look like if scholars accept this? Like, what does it matter if the whole thing is a personal awakening? Then what is this? What happens if the social aspect of like scholars getting it? Who cares?
Um, I suppose
I'm just being flippant for no reason.
no. I mean, I ask these questions. I ask these questions one way or another. That's just a nice flippant way of asking a serious question. You know, in the best of all possible worlds, if enough people thought, "Oh, I've been wasting my life," if enough people kind of said, "Oh, fuck this," let's let's see if we can wake people up. And it's not as if there aren't. My shtick is that the place where you go for people who are interested in a practical, serious way in this genre of human being is to the arts, you know. And who takes them seriously? Do you take artists
Right.
seriously? No, no. Well, who do you take seriously? Scientists and well, some people take other kinds of academics seriously. Well, what if the scientists finally said, "Oh, fuck this shit. Let's go play music."
Hmm.
um, there's some, I think, residual sense that the more people you can get to take these things seriously in a quasi religious but not sectarian sense, you know, I
Hmm.
mean, why did Corbin do what he did? Why did Jung do what he did? He thought, you wake up enough people become self-conscious, maybe we won't blow up the earth. Corbin thought, yeah, if enough people get this little not bit of Gnostic knowledge, maybe they won't kill each other all the time. That's the hope. And I think that's part of what Jeff's up to.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean,
Okay.
it's a grand hope. Do I think there's much chance of it? That's beside the point. I mean, you do what you think is best.
Yeah. I mean, and you never know what you're setting up for. Because again, I go back to like, it's going to be the one person who gets it, or two people who get it, and then what trickles out of that. It's never going to be like the masses get it. Like that's just not a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
People aren't even really interested.
No, no, no,
But we
no.
don't know how to be, and there are so many levels of not knowing how to be. Like I'm starting to think that like the thing I'm talking about in terms of paths leading to facsimiles isn't something that's said, or I mean, it must have been said
Oh,
somewhere, but it's just
sure.
okay. Then why doesn't someone like Ken Wilber get it? Why is he still setting up? Why does somebody look at the tapestry of what's available and try to refine that, knowing
Well,
that
I mean,
that's going to lead you to another illusion? You know?
I mean, this is a discussion to have with Jeffrey or with somebody else who really understands the history of religions, which I do not. But my intuition is that, there have been monks and Zen masters, maybe not very many, who have known exactly this. And, they're gone. They did
Right.
what they could, but it seems to me that and by the way, one of the people in my class who he wouldn't care. Duncan knows, Christian theology really well. And as a consequence, he knows a lot of different theologies really well. And he was a little frustrated, but no, that's not the right word. He was a little surprised that you didn't know more about the theologies of the other religions because he'd say, well, Jeremy said this, and he said, I don't see this anywhere, and Duncan said, well, but it's in so and so and so and so and so and so. Now maybe Duncan's wrong about and that you would read these folks and say, no, it's not quite what I mean, but there are people in, I think, arguably every religion who are close to saying the kinds of things that you're saying. And the reason they don't get much traction is because they don't have much political power or a very strong voice. what we're interested in here is not doesn't neatly work with power dynamics. And that's why sticking a flower in the end of a rifle looked good, but it didn't get you very far. And it's
Huh.
why, I mean, you could make the argument that Jesus was such an awakened being who tried to bring love. There's a guy whose work I know a little bit who said, yeah, Christ brought love and he got the church, and Jung brought the soul and he got the Jung Institute. Oof. you know, and so I think that there have been such people. It's just that but some people remember them for centuries.
Hmm.
And with any luck, we too will be remembered for centuries as being
Probably
mildly
you,
interesting.
you more than me. You have a better shot at that, sir.
Yeah, but no, not for the right reasons.
When next we meet, you will be back from
Yeah,
South America.
yes, I will. And I mean, this will be interesting, and I don't mind continuing to record, and having on record the fact that I have no real idea what to expect, and insofar as possible, I'm trying to avoid expectation because both times so far I was totally out of my, just totally, it was just like, oh shit, wow, this is, yeah. It was not a question of expectation and reward or, it was just like,
Well,
whoa,
can I ask you two more questions?
yes,
They're interrelated.
yes.
One is you've said that in your childhood, well, one you said that you've not had sort of like dark experiences with this, and you're waiting to see the demons. Like you would like that. You
You
welcome
mean
the
the
fear.
fear? I mean, I've had dark experiences, but not terror and fear of soul dissolution or
But
anything.
why is it that you want that? And because I was wondering, does that go back to your childhood? You had mentioned you were having
No, I
visionary sort
mean,
of nightmares from
no,
being
no, it's
sick.
not. Well, yeah. No, it's not that I, it's not that I want horrifying experiences because I've had those and I don't really want any. But what I mean by that is, but both my experiences down there were unpleasant. The second one, very unpleasant for a very long time, but it wasn't terror. It wasn't fear. And I have the preconception that in order for real I don't know, for I don't want to say transcendence because do I want that? I don't know. But in order for really profound personal change to occur, I should hit some level of terror at some point, saying, "Oh no, I don't want to disappear," and then be reborn. But
Right.
maybe that's not necessarily the case. Maybe some very nice woman will just, be nice to me, and I'll wake up and I'll be done.
So, with your childhood experiences, I guess the other question I had about that was, are you alluding to that you think that you might have been an experiencer, but your mom made you think it was nightmares?
I'm alluding, no, not experiencer, but a broader, no, not like UFOs. Although
Okay.
the thought has crossed my
Well, or
mind,
something,
but
not
but but
UFOs,
but
but
I guess in a broader sense, because I'm not, I genuinely, I believe, I'm not trying to think of my own childhood as terribly special because it wasn't terribly special. All kids go through this. My point, I think, is a bigger one about being taught very early on what counts as real. And my most important experiences, most terrifying, most powerful, were all unreal. That's not real. Go back to sleep. It's a dream. And so, if the most powerful, most moving experiences that you have, you're told, whether they're positive or negative, and in my memory, they were mostly pretty negative, you're told, oh, that's not real. It's like, oh, fuck. Well, then what is? You mean, oh, man, milk, strawberries, yeah, those are nice. But what about these really, really, really powerful experiences and they're just not real, I'm not supposed to pay them any attention? How could that not fuck you up?
Okay, this cycles us back. Now we're going to come full circle here. So this is what we were talking about when we were talking about like Seth and reality. Like, it doesn't matter if you had a fever dream or if beings were coming to you in a dream. What matters is that if it was formative to you
Yeah,
personally.
yeah.
But if that's formative to you personally, that doesn't mean I want to listen to your dreams, because to me, who gives a shit? You know what I
Oh, of
mean?
course
Unless
not.
your dream is actually a being coming and being like, say this to the world,
Oh, well,
then
no.
it's
And
not really for the world.
yeah, it's not for the world. No, no, no. I
So
don't
it's
think
great so I'm just saying that for people out there. Like, this is the
yeah.
difference between like a dream that
Ah,
matters for you
yeah,
personally and
yeah,
something that's like, I've got to share with the world my dreams.
yeah.
Or even saying like, oh, dreams don't matter, they're just dreams.
Well, this is, see,
They matter to you. They formed you.
this question shows up, of course, all the time in potentially in every religious tradition, but in Jung too. There was a part of Jung that kind of wanted, there was a aspect of his personality that could easily have become a prophet, you know, because he had that kind of presence and he could have, and every once in a while he speaks that way. And ooh, no, and he chose not to do that. He said, no, no,
Right.
no, 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 I'm not going to do that. That would be a
But there
mistake.
is something, like I had mentioned before, that I'd interviewed this guy who says that he is an experiencer because he's had these dreams. And we all know that dreams are just as real as reality. And so if you dream about an alien, that's the same as an alien coming to you. And it's like, I guess what I'm getting at too is like, the other way to see this is how that would be offensive to me as somebody who has had like a lifetime of like legit struggle and trying to understand life, the universe, and everything because of those experiences versus, but if for you personally that has done something for you, that's great, but keep it there because it doesn't translate to the outside world is the way you think it might,
Yeah, yeah.
because it isn't really true.
That seems no, that seems totally right to me, and linked in complicated ways with what I've talked about in the class that you're listening to the recordings of. As this is a related issue, it's not the same, but it's a related issue. But my question was whether intimacy scales. you know, how do you? So, oh gosh, this gets complicated. If uh, oh God, we don't have time for this now, but the mistake that I would be making if I said to you, I had this profound dream which must be meaningful to you personally and everyone that you know, is that I'm making I don't know how to talk about this. I don't know what categories to use, but something which is personally and profoundly, intimately meaningful to me doesn't transfer over to you. But it does not mean it wasn't real. So
Yeah.
our categories of reality are contaminated by several centuries of materialist dualism. And that one of the impetuses behind dual aspect monism is the attempt, which is shared by a lot of people in philosophy and elsewhere, religions these days, is to try to think of new ways about thinking about what's real and what isn't that are more adequate to these really complicated experiences.
Right. Okay.
Uh,
Goodbye.